Let's bring in Fox News Sunday anchor and Fox News chief legal correspondent, Shannon Bream. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, guys. And most importantly of all, Mr. Bream puts the gas in my car.
Oh!
And guess what? He will care zero about what social media thinks about that.
Yeah, well, that's why you're so happily married.
Well, that makes two of us. Shannon,
You, Shannon.
Shannon, let's latch on to a word that Pete used, unprecedented. Do you believe that the election for president in 2024 will be unprecedented?
I mean, it is so unusual, but we've been saying that for years, right? And we've said that there's never been an indictment of a former president before. We're way past that now. 3, probably, potentially number 4 coming out of Georgia. That's a possibility. And there are doubts on both sides of the aisle that President Biden is actually going to be the nominee for the Democrats. I think there is a whole lot to play out in the next 16 months or so. It's going to be a wild ride.
It sure is. And part of that wild ride, as you mentioned, are these indictments, which will turn to trials. And right now, the Wall Street Journal has pointed out that Democrats want cameras in there. Here's a part of what the Wall Street Journal has said in an op-ed. That's precisely what Democrats want, a long-running O.J. Simpson-style trial that consumes public and political attention, especially if it takes place before Election Day in 2024. The Democrat claims that TV cameras would make the public more likely to accept a verdict is highly unlikely given America's political polarization and the nature of this prosecution. Is there precedent for cameras in a courtroom?
It does happen, but there have to be exceptions in a federal courtroom like this would be. There are a couple of, court procedures and rules. There are federal criminal procedure rules that would have to be suspended, or there would have to be an exception. You know that a lot of people are going to push for this, but it would take a lot to actually make that happen. And listen, there are people who think both sides could benefit because you get this out there unfiltered. You don't have to just wait and hear what somebody says at the end of the day, and somebody that was in the courtroom. You actually can watch and see it for your own eyes and ears. You'll hear from the witnesses. You'll see the evidence. So, there are people on both sides who think it might be a good idea. I'm going to ask the president's attorney this morning whether they would support this move.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about televising it, but just in general, I mean, the amount of energy and money that Donald Trump has to expend and attention on this versus running. In so many ways, they're tying a hand behind his back. I mean, frankly, I think they'd like to have him in a cage in a trial if they could. I just don't know what to make of this.
Well, listen, to prepare a defendant for any trial is very labor intensive. You got to prepare them for every nook and cranny, the possibility if they want to take the stand or they're cross-examined. There's just a ton of prep that has to happen. And so to have multiple state and federal trials is a real thing. And what we've seen this weekend, you guys have been reporting on this with this back and forth over this motion to delay this protective order. This judge in D.C. does not seem like she is interested in any delays in this process. I think she's going to really try to keep it moving and potentially get that trial done before the election, which would be very speedy for a federal trial, but it is not out of the norm.
Shannon, one of the few hurdles that has stood in the way of the progressive agenda of not just a political party, but increasingly all of the institutions within Washington, D.C., has been the institution of the Supreme Court. Now, many people can look at that as the Supreme Court is the savior of the United States. Others see the Supreme Court then, therefore, as a problem for their vision of the United States. And as a result, we've seen unprecedented attacks on justices. We've seen people in their lawns. We've seen threats on their life. We've heard talks of packing the court. And then, of course, there's these big investigations into ethics or into what they do when they're not sitting on the bench. Well, you know this. On July 28th, Justice Alito said that Congress has no power to regulate the ethics or impose a code of ethics on the Supreme Court. He wrote in the Wall Street Journal, I know this is controversial, but I'm willing to say it. No provision in the Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the Supreme Court, period. Then, to that now, Justice Elena Kagan has responded. Let's watch.
Of course Congress can regulate various aspects of what the Supreme Court does. I mean, Congress funds the Supreme Court. It just can't be that the court is the only institution that somehow is not subject to any checks and balances from anybody else. I mean, we're not imperial. So can Congress do various things to regulate the Supreme Court? I think the answer is yes.
So what is the answer, Shannon? People point out there's little in the Constitution that suggests that there is a way for Congress to impose an ethics code on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last week. She hits on that point, Justice Kagan, that it's about funding, because they do decide funding measures for the judicial branch, and that's where they usually try to exert some control. They want people to come in. They often call in justices when they are having these hearings on what funding they're going to get to say things like, we're all going to force you to put cameras in the courtroom and tie that to the funds. Well, so far, the justices have been able to wave that off and say it's not good for the court. The Chief Justice over there has said, unless everybody sort of agrees on this, we're not going to do it. But it always comes up in this context of funding. There have been measures for years about doing things to regulate the court, talking about adding seats, talking about limiting terms to, certain years, not lifetime. Nothing has gotten through Capitol Hill yet. But listen, the Constitution allows them to change the makeup of the court. They can do that. Congress has that power. And of course, it funds. But as far as imposing an ethics canon on them, there has not been bipartisan agreement about that. And there's nothing in the Constitution technically about something like that.
Interesting.
It's just factually not clear what she said either, that it has no checks and balances. There are checks and balances, to your point, on the court.
Yeah, you can impeach a Supreme Court justice. You can do that, just like you could any other member of, the federal judiciary or, elected official like a president. So there are other,
and the executive
weapons
chooses who sits on the Supreme Court. And to your point, they can change the number of people that sit on the Supreme Court.
It's fascinating. Usually the person sitting in that branch of government isn't the one advocating to have their own power.
It is interesting that the group in the minority, too, is the one advocating for more oversight,
that's what I'm saying.
right? I mean, there's that dynamic also.
Well,
right now, they don't have the
I
votes.
thought it was interesting, just really quickly, it caught my eye this week that there's polling out there that shows a few years ago, back when we had the Obergefell decision legalizing same-sex marriage across the whole country, back then, 75% of Democrats approved of the job the court was doing. So you got to think a lot of what happens on the approval of the court based on the left or the right has to do with how you feel they line up with their decisions with your personal beliefs. And so, the court is going to be in and out of favor with different groups over time.
No doubt. But your show is never out of favor. Who do you have today on Fox News Sunday, Shannon?
So we've got John Lauro, who's representing the president. We'll talk about this back and forth over a protective order. Could there wind up being a gag order in this case? We'll talk to him about that and what he thinks about the idea of televising a trial. We've also got our legal panel following that up. And then to talk about the Hunter stuff and the Devin Archer interview this week, we've got members from both sides of the aisle in the House, Jake Auchincloss and Chip Roy, and we'll break down all the latest in the 2024 polling and fundraising as well.
All right, Shannon. We'll be watching. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.